In the final days of December 2025 and the opening weeks of January 2026, the Russia-Ukraine war entered a new and far more consequential phase. This shift was no longer defined only by battlefield movements or frontline clashes. Instead, it became a conflict shaped by strategic weapons, political signaling, and calculated displays of power. On December 30, 2025, Russia officially announced that it had deployed its newly developed Oshnik missile system to neighboring Belarus. This was not just another military update. It was a deliberate strategic message aimed at Ukraine, NATO, and Western policymakers watching closely from Washington and European capitals. The Oshnik is classified as an intermediate-range ballistic missile, or IRBM, designed to operate at hypersonic speeds. According to multiple reports, it can exceed Mach 10, traveling more than 10 times the speed of sound. More importantly, the missile is nuclear-capable, meaning it can carry either a conventional or a nuclear warhead. That dual capability is what makes the deployment particularly alarming. Both Russian and Belarusian officials confirmed the presence of the system, framing it as a defensive move in response to what Moscow describes as growing NATO pressure along its western borders. But Western analysts see it differently. To them, the deployment looks less like defense and more like strategic leverage, a reminder that Russia still possesses tools capable of dramatically escalating the conflict. Belarus's geography makes the situation even more sensitive. The country borders Ukraine and sits close to multiple NATO member states. From this position, the Oshnik's reported range potentially places large portions of Europe within reach. Russian state media has even claimed that key European targets could be struck in under 20 minutes, a statement clearly designed to heighten psychological pressure. Timing matters. The missile deployment came as diplomatic efforts were quietly underway. Discussions involving Ukraine, the United States, and European allies were focused on security guarantees, military aid, possible paths toward de-escalation. Against that backdrop, the appearance of a new hypersonic missile system looked like Russia placing a heavy card on the table, signaling that negotiations would happen under the shadow of escalation. NATO's response was cautious but unmistakably concerned. There was no immediate military confrontation, but the message was received. European governments intensified discussions around air defense, readiness, radar coverage, and crisis response planning. The issue was not just the missile itself, but what it represents, a growing blur between conventional and nuclear deterrence. European defense analysts have warned that systems like Oshnik increase the risk of miscalculation. Because these missiles travel so fast and can carry nuclear warheads, any launch could be misinterpreted in its early stages, leaving decision-makers with only minutes to assess intent. Ukraine strongly condemned the deployment, calling it a destabilizing move that undermines peace efforts. Ukrainian intelligence services have also warned that Russia and Belarus are building permanent infrastructure, launch facilities, communications networks, and surveillance systems, suggesting that Oshnik is not a temporary signal, but a long-term strategic presence. The real question, then, is not whether the missile will be used, but how its existence reshapes Europe's security calculus and the future of this war. One of the most urgent questions raised by Russia's missile campaign is deceptively simple. Can modern air defense systems stop hypersonic weapons? For years, this debate existed mostly on paper, inside think tanks and defense conferences. Ukraine changed that. Since 2023, Russia has repeatedly used its Kinzhal hypersonic missile against Ukrainian targets, making Ukraine the first real-world battlefield where such weapons have been deployed in sustained combat. The results have challenged both Russian propaganda and Western assumptions. The Kinzhal is launched from modified MiG-31 aircraft and reaches speeds above Mach 10, Unlike traditional ballistic missiles, it follows a maneuvering flight path, reducing predictability and shrinking the window for interception. Russian officials have consistently described the missile as unstoppable. Battlefield experience tells a more complicated story. Ukraine has confirmed that it successfully intercepted multiple Kinzhal missiles using US-supplied Patriot air defense systems. These interceptions, first reported in 2023 and continuing through 2024 and 2025, marked a major milestone for Western missile defense technology. For the first time, a hypersonic missile had been brought down in combat. But success came with caveats. Ukrainian and US officials were careful not to overstate the achievement. Interception is possible, but it is not guaranteed. Patriot systems rely on precise radar tracking, layered defenses, and split-second decision-making. Even under ideal conditions, no system offers perfect coverage. Cost is another critical factor. Each Patriot interceptor missile costs several $1 million. In contrast, Russia can attempt to overwhelm defenses by launching multiple missiles at once or combining hypersonic strikes with cheaper weapons. This tactic, known as a saturation attack, has become central to Russia's long-range strike strategy. Rather than relying solely on hypersonic missiles, Russian forces increasingly pair Kinzhals with Shard-type drones, cruise missiles like the Kh-101, and short-range ballistic missiles such as the Iskander-M. The goal is simple: exhaust air defenses, force defenders to prioritize targets, and create openings for high-value strikes against energy infrastructure, logistics hubs, and command centers. Ukraine's air defense network is now one of the most heavily used in the world. Ukrainian military data shows that the majority of incoming aerial threats are intercepted, but officials openly acknowledge the strain. Missile stockpiles are finite, systems require maintenance, and the sheer scale of Russian attacks ensures that some weapons inevitably get through. Western analysts point out another important reality: hypersonic missiles like Kinzhal are not used in large numbers. They are expensive, complex to manufacture, and strategically valuable. Russia tends to reserve them for moments when it wants maximum military or political impact, not for routine strikes. From NATO's perspective, Ukraine has become a real-world laboratory. Military planners are closely studying radar data, interception timelines, and system performance. The war has accelerated investment in next-generation missile defense, including improved sensors, faster interceptors, and space-based early warning systems. Yet even limited hypersonic penetration carries serious consequences. When a missile can be nuclear capable and travels at extreme speed, the danger isn't only physical damage, it's miscalculation. A launch could be interpreted as a nuclear strike before its true nature is confirmed. Ukraine's experience has proven one thing beyond doubt: hypersonic missiles are not magic weapons, but stopping them is costly, complex, and never guaranteed. While hypersonic missiles dominate headlines, the most transformative change in the Ukraine war has happened much closer to the ground. Over the past 2 years, the conflict has evolved into one of the most drone-intensive wars in modern history. What began as a supporting tool has now become a central pillar of combat. Both Russia and Ukraine rely heavily on unmanned aerial systems, fundamentally reshaping how battles are fought and exposing the limits of traditional military power. Before the war, tanks like Russia's T-90M and Western-supplied Leopard 2 and M1 Abrams were considered among the most survivable armored vehicles on the battlefield. In Ukraine, that assumption collapsed. Cheap, widely available first-person view, or FPV, drones have repeatedly disabled or destroyed vehicles worth millions of dollars. Many of these drones cost only a few hundred to a few $1,000s. Guided by live video feeds, operators can steer them directly into vulnerable points, engine compartments, turret rings, or exposed ammunition storage. The result is a dramatic shift in the cost-exchange ratio. A low-cost drone can neutralize equipment that took years and millions of dollars to produce. Visual evidence and open-source battlefield analysis confirm losses on both sides. Ukrainian drones have struck Russian armor and artillery, while Russian FPV drones and loitering munitions have destroyed Western-supplied vehicles. Analysts stress that this does not mean tanks are obsolete, but it does mean they can no longer operate without constant protection from infantry, air defense, and electronic warfare. Drones are no longer just strike weapons, they shape the entire battlefield. Reconnaissance drones provide near-constant surveillance, making concealment difficult and movement dangerous. Large armored formations, once the backbone of offensive operations, are now broken into smaller, dispersed units to reduce detection. Russia has expanded its use of Shard-type drones, using them not only to strike targets, but to drain Ukrainian air defenses. Ukraine, meanwhile, has built a significant domestic drone industry, producing reconnaissance drones, strike drones, and even naval drones used against Russian ships in the Black Sea. Electronic warfare has become just as decisive as firepower. Both sides attempt to jam GPS signals, disrupt drone communications, and interfere with navigation systems. This has triggered rapid adaptation. New fiber-optic-guided drones, immune to radio jamming, have appeared. Others rely on visual navigation instead of satellite guidance. The impact on soldiers is profound. Daylight movement has become extremely risky. Troops depend on camouflage, underground positions, rapid relocation, and constant situational awareness. Survival now depends as much on avoiding detection as on firepower. Western militaries are watching closely. Ukraine has exposed major gaps in NATO doctrine, particularly in counter-drone defense and survivability in environments saturated with sensors. Many analysts now argue that future wars will be decided not only by air superiority at high altitude, but by control of low-altitude airspace. For Ukraine, drones have become an equalizer, allowing a smaller force to challenge a larger adversary. For Russia, mass production of drones offers a way to maintain pressure while reducing risk to pilots and manned aircraft. The lesson is unmistakable. Drone warfare is no longer a supplement to modern combat. It is redefining it, and the world is learning in real time. As Russia expands its use of advanced missiles and drone warfare, the future of the Ukraine war is increasingly shaped far from the battlefield. Decisions made in Washington, Brussels, Berlin, and other Western capitals now play a decisive role in determining how long the war lasts and how it ends. At the center of these debates lies a single, high-stakes question: how far should Western military support for Ukraine go? Since 2022, the United States and its allies have provided Ukraine with tens of billions of dollars in military assistance. This support has included artillery, armored vehicles, air defense systems, intelligence sharing, and extensive training. Over time, the sophistication of this aid has steadily increased, reflecting both Ukraine's evolving needs and growing Western confidence in Kyiv's ability to operate advanced systems. Some of the most consequential decisions involved air defense and long-range strike capabilities. The delivery of Patriot systems allowed Ukraine to intercept ballistic and hypersonic missiles. Later came precision-guided munitions, long-range artillery, and advanced armored vehicles. Each step, however, sparked intense debate inside NATO governments. The most sensitive issue remains long-range weapons capable of striking deep into Russian territory. Systems such as ATACMS and European cruise missiles have been discussed, and in some cases, delivered with restrictions. Western leaders have tried to balance battlefield effectiveness with the risk of escalation, aiming to help Ukraine defend itself without triggering a direct NATO-Russia war. Ukraine argues that these limitations create a sanctuary for Russia, allowing missile launches and logistics operations to continue with relative impunity. Ukrainian officials have repeatedly stressed that without the ability to strike launch sites and command centers beyond the front line, air defense alone will never be enough. European allies remain divided. Countries closer to Russia's borders, including Poland and the Baltic states, generally favor stronger measures and fewer restrictions. Others, such as Germany and several southern European nations, advocate caution, emphasizing the dangers of uncontrolled escalation. Meanwhile, Russia has adapted its strategy for a long war. Since 2023, Moscow has significantly expanded military production, shifting its economy toward wartime output. Missile manufacturing, drone production, and artillery shell output now outpace most NATO countries' peacetime capacity. Russia's approach is based on endurance, using scale, attrition, and persistence rather than rapid breakthroughs. Ukraine faces a very different challenge. Unlike Russia, it lacks a large population buffer. Manpower shortages, ammunition supply, and air defense availability remain constant pressures. Without sustained Western support, Ukraine's defensive capacity would weaken quickly. Yet Ukraine has shown remarkable resilience. Innovation, adaptability, and high morale continue to offset numerical disadvantages. Precision strikes, drones, and layered defenses have allowed Kyiv to impose costs far beyond what its size would normally permit. Several potential futures now dominate strategic discussions. One scenario is a prolonged war of attrition, with slow frontline shifts and mounting economic and human costs. Another involves escalation. If restrictions loosen and strikes expand, Russia may respond with intensified missile campaigns. A third possibility is negotiated de-escalation, driven not by victory, but by exhaustion and shifting political priorities. Globally, the war has already reshaped security planning. NATO has expanded. Defense budgets across Europe have surged. Military doctrines are being rewritten to account for drones, missile saturation, and electronic warfare. Arms control frameworks, particularly those governing intermediate-range and hypersonic weapons, continue to erode. For clear, no-nonsense military analysis, subscribe to Military Insider. Hit subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay ahead of the story. Military Insider.